Recovery, and that debuted on YouTube today. So if you're interested, please check that out. If you want to check out the previous episodes, I spoke to Scott Keft and Jennifer Wilson Buttigieg for the first two, and those are available there too. Coming up, I want to announce that we have Peter Yesowich of MMGY speaking about the industry's recovery, and Betsy O'Rourke of Xantara Travel speaking about her career in the industry as well. And those are two conversations I really did enjoy. So if you have some time when you're driving or cooking or cleaning this weekend, please take a listen. And any feedback, likes, or comments on those videos helps us grow that channel. Subscriptions help too. So all interactions, they're very much appreciated. All right. So now that that's out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and welcome Tom Karnes from LaMacchia Travel in Kenosha, Wisconsin, as our travel advisor today. Tom's here to talk about reaching into your pocket to help your customer, when and why you should do that. Tom, I learned this week, is a Cubs and Bears fan from Chicago, so we're not going to hold that against him. But he's had a very long career in travel, and I'm very happy to talk to him today and get his expertise. So welcome, Tom, and thank you for joining us.
As if COVID wasn't bad enough, you had to throw in the Cubs and the Bears on me. Wow, that was a heck of a shot there, Dan. But
I think it could definitely be worse. But I thought that seemed appropriate to kick us off today.
But the only thing we got to add in there that makes it even more painful is I live in Wisconsin. That's the part you forgot to add in there. The Brewers and the Packers tend to be the major, nemesis of both of those teams, and I'm surrounded by it. So.
Well, I feel like at a certain point, good things have to come your way. And
eventually
I'll be rooting for you in that journey.
Appreciate it.
So before we get into the topic, I want to ask you about your agency, LaMacchia Travel. Can you tell me how long you've been in business and what kind of clients you typically serve?
Sure. Thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to do this. LaMacchia Travel is based here in Kenosha, Wisconsin. My grandfather started the business in 1931, so we are very excited to celebrate our 90th anniversary this year. We are a brick and mortar agency, 90 years old, still family owned and operated. Brick and mortar, as I mentioned, we are a full service travel agency. I would say our Sun and Fun business, I'll use 2019 as an example. Our Sun and Fun business was probably 50% of our business. Our Europe and international was probably about 40%. And then the last 10% was meetings and incentives. So we have a nice full mix. Our staff is well diversified across all channels. We like to say we offer the world. LaMacchia, my wife, Monica, and myself are third generation owners of the agency. We bought it together. She was not in the travel industry 12 years ago. And I promised her when we bought the agency, I'd only need her for maybe the first year to get it off the ground. So something she holds over me, and rightfully so, but she adds too much of a value to this company for us to let it go. LaMacchia Travel is also is the flagship of our entities. We have two other entities. We have a company called Love and Away, which is a national luxury romance brand. And the reason we came up with Love and Away for our luxury romance is we saw our wedding business growing and growing and growing. And LaMacchia is tough to say in some parts of the region, in some parts of the nation. So we had to come up with something that was a little bit more, I would say, applicable.
Okay.
And then during COVID last year, my wife and I sat at our dining room table when we were all banished at home to work. And we realized there's an opportunity to open a host agency. So, come September, October, we pulled together LaMacchia Jetstream and announced that to the world in the first week of December. And the Jetstream has taken off and it is soaring. So we're very excited to have that. So that's a little bit about us.
Yeah, 90 years is a long time. You only one more decade until you reach the centennial, which is an impressive mark for any business, let alone a travel agency. So that has to be something you're looking forward to.
I have a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins. Many of them have worked in the business, been in the business. Let's just say there's a lot of pressure not to screw it up. So, hey, that's where we're at. We use that as our motivation to not become complacent, not become run of the mill, and just kind of keep looking for opportunities to keep the LaMacchia name going.
Yeah, well, I think it is something to hang your hat on too. And you mentioned brick and mortar, and I want to talk about that first before we get into the topic again, because I know there's been a theme in the industry, not even just travel, but in a lot of different industries, about sort of the death of the storefront or the brick and mortar because of COVID. But you mentioned the other day that having a brick and mortar location has really allowed you and your locations to be a part of the community. Can you talk about that for a little bit? What kind of impact does it have being able to have a storefront and be able to serve the people who are able to see you in the community?
It's kind of interesting. We're blessed right off the bat with our location. I mean, we're right between Milwaukee and Chicago. We have 3 major international airports within 60 miles of us. So our location allows us, I would say, the luxury of having a storefront because there's not really any other retail agencies around us. So it's kind of important, and having been part of the fabric of the community here in Kenosha for the 90 years, it's when I started in the travel industry in like 1982, 83, a travel agency was truly a social setting. People would come in. I mean, they were only really buying airline tickets and slowly moving into the cruise and tour business, but it was a social entity. People would come in, they'd talk, they'd exchange ideas. Obviously, they're picking up brochures. And we've seen that change, post September 11th, probably, right up to the beginning of COVID. But when you're the only travel agency really in the area and you have such a dynamic area of travelers, it's kind of become a social area again. So, it's great to see our offices full of clients coming in and asking questions and meeting with our agents. We have agents, we did the furlough when everything happened. So most of our agents were working from home. But when we got everybody back into office and clients were coming back in, it really becomes that center, that just kind of the focal point. So we have, people that are doing fundraisers. We're in downtown Kenosha, and downtown Kenosha is a really great area with a lot of arts and entertainment and restaurants and bars and some really great, it's a great town. We've gotten some bad press in the last year, but it truly is a great town. And we're part of that. So people are coming in just to say hi. People are coming in to, I heard, you sponsored the stage at one of the summer events, or you donated to my sister's fundraiser. So we use this as our base, and it really kind of, for 90 years, people really kind of enjoy coming in and talking to us.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say that there's still a brick and mortar location in my neighborhood here in New York, and they are constantly, I see people streaming in and out there all the time. It is what you described. It does seem like a town square almost.
Yes.
Especially with relationships with people you've built over the years too. They love to come in and say hello, especially after we've had the absence of that for so long.
Oh yeah, it is. It's great to see people, people at the desks. It really is.
Yeah. So I also want to touch on one more thing before we start. You described yourself as very pro customer earlier in the week, and I think talking about that is going to help us set the stage for the conversation. What did you mean by pro customer?
When I started in the business in the early 80s, I was lucky enough to work with my grandma LaMacchia and a couple of my uncles through the years, and many cousins. But my uncle Ed, who I started with, he was so pro customer, so service that, the customer's always right, even when they're not right. You know what I mean? So, and when you're part of the community, you don't want somebody talking bad about you. Back then, there was 9 travel agencies in our town of 89,000 people. And that was kind of normal. And you did not want to upset somebody or disappoint somebody and have them go to one of the other agencies and start talking about you. And that has always been burned into my head. And anybody that works with me, or I hate to say for me, but we collectively work together. That's the thing. The client is always right. And I say that, and I think my team would support me on it. Client is always right without me compromising the integrity of my employees. And I guess it's the way you go about handling a situation that defines that. But it's just burned in my head, Dan. That's just the way it is. The customer is always right. And it just sometimes blows my mind over the years, having traveled with so many agents and so many other people, where the dollar tends to be a little bit more important than the consumer and the experience. So having traveled and talked to a lot of other agencies, I think it just solidified my team's real commitment to the consumer.
Yeah, and again, 90 years is a testament to that, I think, too. So let's get into the topic now. And I do want to remind everyone on the call that if you have a question, please drop it in the chat and we'll grab them as we go along. We want to make these as interactive as possible. So now I want to talk about reaching into your pocket, which was the topic of the conversation today. I know the phrase is fairly self-explanatory, but when you mention that phrase and when you mention that as something that you might do as an agent sometimes in your career. What do you mean by that exactly?
You know, when you want your consumer to have such a great experience all the time, every time somebody walks out with the documents or travel plans, we are vested in that vacation. Again, because we're here, they're going to come back. If we screw up and they're pissed off, they're coming here. We're here to answer that and take care of it. Where your OTAs and many of the other, Costco type of things, there's nobody there to take that abuse. So maybe it's a self-centered thing. I don't want anybody coming back all ticked off or anything. So we really want their experience to be as good as possible. And travel is something you can't control the experience. Once they leave us, it could be a cab driver that screws up their vacation. It could be the front desk. It could be the pair of underwear the cleaning lady missed under the bed. I mean, there's so many extremes that it's something like, let's say, got a client who goes to a hotel in Mexico. They got an ocean view room. Check into their room. They open up the curtains, and sure enough, why wouldn't there be a palm tree between their room and the ocean? Right? Doesn't say that in the brochure. The brochure says an ocean view room. Client expresses disappointment, comes back, tell the client, you know what? That's we feel bad. I'm sorry to hear that. That shouldn't have been. You paid for an ocean view room. Call up the tour operator and tell the tour operator, hey, there's a tree in front. Tour operator's like, we can't be responsible for that. We're sorry, apologize to your clients, blah, blah, blah. Then you call the hotel, same answer. And, maybe it's honeymooners that are outgoing and you knew there was a special reason for it. And you just look at this client and go, you know what? I feel for you. That sucked, man. You know what? How about I give you $100 credit off your next trip? Oh, your honeymooners, you're going to get pregnant. You don't plan. You know what? Here's $100. Here's $100. We feel bad for you. Take it. And again, the dollar amounts, I use 100 just as a random note. But again, there's always it's all predicated on the cost of their vacation.
Yep.
So, there's simple things, just that simple, that you can just say, instead of fighting with a tour operator over and over and then going back to the hotel, you're over and over all that time. It's like, you know what? Here's $100. And if you do it in the right and caring way, it's going to pay for itself over and over.
Yeah, that it seems that you, as the owner, or you with LaMacchia, it is you do have a long-term view of things as opposed to a short-term view of things. But I mean, so you mentioned this scenario with the palm tree with an ocean view room. I mean, are these decisions that you're making on a case-by-case basis, or do you have a criteria that you use for you and your employees of when exactly you're going to reach into your pocket to make the customer's vacation a little better?
You know what? The environment kind of dictates it. There is not anything in a booklet or handbook that, when you sign on, you read, okay, you're allowed to give X amount, or if there's a customer service issue, you think you can take care of it. No, it's the environment. It's how we train our agents and how they see how I act, how my wife acts towards employees and management and the people that have been here. We give our agents a lot of autonomy. We give them the ability to make decisions where I'm sitting in my office and a client, one of my agents is saying, hey, you know what? Even if it's a price match, let's say your tour operator can't get it to the point you need. My agents know enough to come back and say, listen, I've been working with this person for a half hour, 30 minutes. We're this close. They want me to price match. Tour operator won't. We're $48 per person for 4 people. We're $200 off. And the next word out of my agent's mouth is we're making $783 because they're going to tell me exactly what we're going to make. I know my threshold of pain usually, and I'll tell them, go for it. Or, you know what, your service is so much better than anything you're out, we don't cheapen it, but your service is so much better than X. Tell them we'll meet them halfway. And that usually works. And the gratitude and the commitment from the majority of clients, knowing you're willing to work with them, makes us real, makes us tangible. And that's something that you can't replicate.
Yeah, especially, I mean, the conversation, especially pre-COVID, has always been these battles with the OTA and with online travel agencies, with Expedia and Travelocity, things like that. And I mean, I can't imagine Expedia's going into their back end a lot to offer credits, willy-nilly without going through a tremendously painful process. And I think this is another example of why consumers should be booking with travel advisors.
I was a vice president at a large tour operator for about 8 years, and LaMacchia Travel was still one of my projects that I oversaw. So I never really left here, but I worked for a company. And I would never have had that flexibility that I have as the owner because, and I get it. I mean, if I did discount something or I rebated, you know, accounting is calling me in to find out why you did this. The quarterly meetings, people are calling you out on it. I get why you can't do that. And you know, what's funny is that's truly the ability, the unique ability for a company or an agency like us to be able to do that, that commitment to the customer where there's not a whole bunch of levels. I mean, you know, any customer service issue, my phone number is available. Customers can get a hold of me anytime. And boy, do they ever. So
So I do want to put something else in context too, because when we were having a prep call earlier in the week, you spoke about calculating what your time is worth and then deciding whether or not it's appropriate to reach into your pocket. And I mean, if as that as a process, how do you do that as a process, not just as an agency owner, but as an advisor who might be running a smaller agency too? How do you calculate what your time is worth?
you know what, it's something that I kind of played around with over the years. And you know what, it's not for everybody and is it perfect. I mean, if you're a $5 million agency and you're an agency manager or you're the owner, if you look at that, you're generating $600,000 in sales. I mean, commission. So you're generating $600,000 in commission on that. You know, if you're an owner or manager, you're working a minimum 50 hours a week, minimum, right? So if you break that down and do the numbers on that, I'm responsible for for a $5 million agency. I'm responsible for $260 of revenue an hour. Okay. So if I have a battle of, again, a consumer that's upset with the front desk experience or the room category that the tour operator's not getting back to me on, or the hotel's not getting back to me on, and I've already put an hour into it, I mean, that's $260. You know, if you want to follow up, let's say it's 2 hours when you're all said and done and you distribute it out through the agencies as well. That's $520 for 2 hours worth of work where I could just say, here's $200. You're good. I'm good. I can now spend the rest of my time top end generating revenue instead of chasing it. And you know what, and that is strictly my opinion. A lot of people out there be like, hey, I work for that money. I'm not giving it away. There's no way, you know, but that's just kind of my skill set. I mean, it's, if you take the personality test, 16 personalities or Colby, I know what I'm good at. And I know what I really dread and hate. And I'm blessed enough to have enough people around me that offset my shortcomings. For agencies that are much smaller, that maybe got 3 of the same personalities in there that got to chase it. Somebody's going to have to chase it. At some point, you got to cut your tie and say, you know what, here you go away. And really the credibility you get again with that consumer that could be so detrimental to your reputation in business, all of a sudden escalates to a much higher and they're more willing to refer you.
Yeah, it is interesting because we had Jill Labar on 2 weeks ago speaking about social media. And one of the points she made was that it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all strategy for every agency. And throughout this series, we've had more than 30 travel advisors on because we've had a couple of panels, and we've had advisors who were very bullish on fees and advisors who would never charge a fee. We had advisors who would only sell luxury and the others would sell mass market vacations. And we have you selling destinations, weddings, and it just is such a unique career to have as a travel advisor that can go so many ways. So I think that's important for people to keep in mind, is that, you know, you're going to hear a lot of advice throughout your career. And while there's a lot of good advice out there, it's not going to be a one size fit all.
When I started in the industry, Dan, you are so right on that. I would attend conferences and there would be cruise lines that would be, you know, you'd be in a room with 500 other travel agents with your pen and your paper there. And the cruise line would be up there telling you what you should be doing and how you should do it. And you'd write it down and you'd go back to the office and try to implement it. And then it would be forgotten about. And you'd get frustrated with yourself and you'd start thinking, hey, you know what? I must not really be a good business leader, or I'm way behind everybody else. Everybody else is smarter than me. God, I mean, for as many years as I've been in this, I've been through every one of those emotions. And it finally got to the point where you start taking a step back, know that, hey, the cruise line is coming at it from the cruise line standpoint, baby. They're not coming at it from the travel agency standpoint. The tour operators are coming at it from their standpoint. There's not always, they may have advisory boards with travel agents, but at the end of the day, let me tell you, it's about what they need, not necessarily what we need. Now, granted, I'm not bashing them too much. I don't want the tour operators and cruise lines to be upset with me, but my point is exactly what you said. Find what fits for you. There's going to be agents listening to this presentation that'll be like, I don't have the budget to be able to do that. I don't have the commission level to be able to do that. You know what, then you got to go back to those things you hate to do. And you got to, focus on that top line sales, get to the point. A big word that we use around here is leverage. An uncle of mine taught me the importance of the word leverage. So if you are a smaller agency and you don't have the luxury of saying, hey, here's $100, go away and come back and book your next trip with me. You grow your top line sales. You have that point of leverage where things get a little bit easier. You do have the money to give to them. You do have the power to press the tour line and a cruise line to give you a customer service response immediately instead of dragging it out.
Yeah. And I think that, again, that's it's important for travel advisors to keep that in mind going forward too. And I see a couple of comments coming in. Please, if anyone has questions, drop them in the chat. Sandra Tompkins says, I think when you were speaking about going into your pocket before we got into that, she said she likes that concept. And then we have someone saying that most professional advisors charge fees except travel agents, which is something we seem to touch upon each one of these sessions. And before, I guess I have many more questions on the topic of the day, but I do want to ask you, just because we seem to ask this to every guest. I mean, do you charge a fee, and is it a standard fee across all vacations your agency books?
Great. It's a great question. It's a complicated answer. With our agency, we charge fees for airline tickets. We charge fees for unique FITs that are going to be take more time. And we have been working on our across the board fee structure for about 3 years. And it's not for a lack of me wanting to do it. It's kind of a lack of, how do I get everybody to make that a consistent, how do we implement that consistently across the board? So yes, we do charge fees for certain things that we know are, we need to get our money back. And in our Love and Away business, because we had ability to kind of start from the beginning and it's more of a national brand, we do have those non-refundable deposits that if somebody cancels their wedding, there's a large penalty that we maintain. So we get it there. LaMacchia Travel, we still have, I would say, about 40% more to go to be able to get it across the board. So we kind of fit it in where it works right now.
Okay. So you mentioned before, not some agencies might not have the budget to do a lot of these things right now. And I'm curious for the agencies who are considering maybe having a more consumer-centric approach or customer-centric approach going forward. In your experience, where does the money come from when you are, quote unquote, reaching into your pocket? Is it something that you have a line for in your budget every year?
Yeah, every year, there is what we have. Customer relations is a line item that we have in there. And that's going to be everything from offsetting, mistakenly, we advised somebody a COVID test was included in where they were staying. Well, when they got there, it wasn't. So we reimburse them for that because we advised them incorrectly. To, balloons and flowers when you check into your hotel at the Olani in Hawaii or whatever it is. So that consumer services line, we fill quite a bit. And it's all predicated on what we think our sales are going to be that year. There's also a second line item that I use just kind of as a safety net for me to be able to manage things. And it's an agent error section. So I establish a dollar amount each month on my budget, says, you know what, here's an agent error section that, and it kind of gets to become a game. You know what, can I beat my agent error section this year? And, when LaMacchia Travel is, we crank out, 2019, and we're getting there right now. We crank out a lot of business. Our business is 2s and 4s and, 6s, 2s, 4s. We're not known for, huge groups to get our numbers. We crank out 2s, 4s, this type of thing. So when you're doing that much, there's always going to be a mistake and an error. What I do want to say about the agent error is, there's skin in the game for my agents or my advisors, because it doesn't just mean like, oh, hey, here's $500 of mistakes you can make this month. No, it's each mistake is looked at, reviewed. If it is a blatant issue on theirs, we have a repercussion to hold them somewhat accountable for it.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's important to know too, because errors will happen, and knowing that advisors or consumers will be compensated for, I think, is important too. We have a question that's off topic, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Jennifer Walker just wants to know, out of curiosity, what accounting software do you use for recording supplier payments for clients? I'm assuming she's in the middle of a transition or wondering,
Right
or what
now,
are
we,
looking for
we
some
kind of
advice.
have a little bit of, I don't want to say antiquated, but we use trams for all our accounting front end, but we move it all to a QuickBooks. We move
Okay.
everything over. QuickBooks is where we generate our checks and all our expenses and line items. We just move sales and cost the sales over from trams.
Okay. All right. So I also spoke to Lee Rosen. If anyone wants to check that interview out, that's on TMR too, about trams and Sabre. Just a plug there. So I wanna keep going with this topic. And people, I think when people sort of heard that the quote unquote reaching into your pocket for consumers, some of them had thoughts that came to mind about sending gifts for birthdays or sending gifts for anniversaries or holidays or things like that. And I'm curious if that is that something you do, and if you do it, is that a part of that budget you just described?
Yeah, that comes out of our customer relations account I talked about. And yes, there's the traditional Christmas card, birthday greeting. We're not really, I'm not going to lie, we don't do the big formal birthday card to everybody. But we do try to make every trip as special as possible. I mean, there's people that that we have clients that book an oceanic cruise every year. And you know what, right out of the bat, they know we're throwing in their round trip limousines from Kenosha to O'Hare. We got sending the car down, bringing them back. We in Mexico, we may pick up an excursion. A lot of times we'll upgrade it to a private transfer. And again, it goes to knowing who we're dealing with,
Yep.
and really, it really kind of goes to that. But we absolutely, it's kind of funny because in the old days, I used to spend an embarrassing amount of money advertising in newspapers. I mean, and you never, I mean, we tracked how many sales we got through there, but you never really knew if it was just reinforcing the brand image or if the sale came from it. And when I look at how much money we used to spend, and we don't spend that much anymore, it's more social media, it's more, a lot less, a smaller budget. We feel, and we look at our numbers. I mean, our referral business and our repeat business is the majority of all our business. So we're throwing in a limo for somebody that's going on a cruise, they're telling, oh, you know what, I booked my cruise there. So it's the best form of advertising for us right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think that you can sort of see the direct relationship between what you're putting out there and when you're getting back to. And we have another question. Well, you have two more. We have a couple questions coming in, but another question is about, you mentioned referrals. Do you do anything for when you get a referral from a current client or a future client? Do you send a gift card or a travel credit when a client brings in another client for your business?
I am going to be embarrassed to say yes, we do. Two, it's not executed as well as it needs to be. Again, there's somebody who needs to manage those certificates, because when you do so many 2s and 4s, and then all of a sudden so-and-so, you got to put in their profile. You put in their profile, and the agent might forget to check the profile under that section to see if they have a credit. If the client forgot, it just got to be cumbersome. And again, when you empower the frontline agents and somebody comes in and says, okay, I'm here to book my Jamaica trip. Hey, did my friends, the Johnsons, come in last week and book that Ireland thing I recommended? They'll look at it. Oh yeah, they did. They booked it with, Jody and, blah, blah, blah. And then again, guess what? Somebody knocks on my door and says, hey, the Smiths are in. They're booking a trip to Jamaica. They referred to, I'm like, knock $50 off. A thank you that way seems to work. And it works for, our VIP and our solid clients. We really don't do that for our marginal clients. And when I mean marginal, I don't mean to be insulting at all. It's just the new business that comes in.
Yeah, and we have a question about advertising, and I think we're going to hold on to that for a little bit, because I do want to just put a bow on the rest of this conversation. I mean, from what we've been speaking about, Tom, I was wondering if you have any anecdotes or any stories that you want to share with us about when reaching into your pocket did prove to be worthwhile for you or your agency.
We had just perfect example. We had a new client reach out to us December 2019. They booked a trip to Ireland for June of 2020. Obviously, that didn't go. We canceled it. February, March, we started looking at rebooking them for later in the year. They wanted to get something on the books later in the year. Went through all the process of that. Didn't work, had to cancel it as well. So we sat on it for a while. The client reached out to us in probably February of this year to look at doing a Hawaii trip in May. And we went back to the tour operator. We found out what their future travel credit was, got the dollar amount, put it on there, quoted the client the price. Client came back, requested, okay, we want to book that. So by the time the tour company got back to us with confirmation on the hotel room, the price on the package had gone up $400. We got to go back to the client, tell them the price went up $400. They say, okay, fine, we book it. We again wait for the hotel to get locked in. So we're dragging out on the front end, and the client's getting pissed because he can't get an immediate acknowledgement because, as we all know, tour companies are slow and they're struggling through to get the information over. So they call us back. The client calls me at home on a Friday night and she's just livid because she can't get the confirmation saying her hotel and car is booked. I said, you know what? It's late Friday night. I'll look at it. So I get involved on Monday morning. We call the tour operator back, push them for a response. They finally get us a confirmation. After they get us the confirmation, they tell us they originally misquoted us. The credit was originally $3,200 is what we told the client, which is what they expected. The tour company came back and said it was $2,700. We're fighting with them about it. And I get the client, and meanwhile, I'm just calling the client every day to let her know, hey, I'm on it. We're working on it. Giving her my commitment. Basically, you find out that we get a confirmation from them, finally send it to the client. The tour operator booked the wrong departure date. So now we got to go back to the tour company, get them to change their tour dates. Then as we're doing that, they're still telling us my client owes $400, $500 more than what we originally told them. We've had all these issues going on prior to it. Then I'm like, and then right when we get everything pretty much set,
yep,
we get a confirmation from the tour operator that says your client did not sign the COVID acknowledgement release. So we send it off to the client, and they're still frustrated that they can't get their final documents and everything. They sign it, send it back. We send the tour operator sends it back to us saying, sorry, we're not going to acknowledge. We don't acknowledge a automated signature. You need to sign it yourself. It needs to be signed, send it back to the client. So we're fighting this whole time with the tour operator about the $500 they miscalculated to us, right? So when this whole show is done, do you really think I'm going back to that client to say, oh, by the way, you owe me $380 net? No, I'm not. I'm going back to the client saying, we got it done. Here's your documents. Thanks for your patience. And at a certain point, you tell them what transpired. You don't tell them as it's going on. You take the bullet, you take the blame, you stand up for what the problem is. Then when everything's fixed, you say, you know what? Here's what happened. Because the client, they start questioning your capabilities. They start questioning, why would you put me into this tour company? Why? When they don't really realize what COVID really did for tour operators.
Yeah, and I do just want to ask you one more question on that topic. When you have that situation and you go through the story you just told us, what does that do for the relationship with the client? What kind of impact does that have going forward, not only for that client, but for referrals from that client, for things like that? What kind of value is that to your agency?
The value on that is when myself or my wife get involved, when they know they're dealing with the owner of the agency and we're babysitting them, we're taking care of them, they feel confident that they may not like what we're saying. Okay. They may not like the results of something. And yet we're still sheltering them from the ugliness of whatever's going on in the back end. But if you know how to communicate with clients and you express, when you tell a client, this sucks, I'm sorry you're going through this, we're going to fix it. Don't start blaming us, but you gotta sympathize with them. And if they see that, and at the end result that travel experience, let me tell you, they haven't left yet, but when they do, I will be babysitting every day of their trip to make sure at the end of it, they're going to be like, wow, for a bad experience, these people are committed and focused on making sure to make it right.
Yeah.
I would say, to answer your question right now, I would got a 60% they'll come back and make referral. 40% we may never hear from them again.
Yeah, but I want to reinforce the fact almost 100 years in business for LaMacchia Travel. So clearly, I think what it comes down to is what you mentioned through this call is knowing who your client is and knowing what impact those relationships are going to have, not only on your clients, but on future clients too.
Yeah.
And
I
going
will
off
tell
of,
you, can I just say, when you learn knowing about your client, do your diligence on them. If you're struggling or you're finding a difficult client, or somebody's calling you out for ridiculous, because let's face it, there are so many ridiculous requests out there. Do your diligence. Find out how big is this? How big of a Facebook page does this person have? Do they have Instagram? Are they on Twitter? Do a little research. And the one thing I would make sure to find out if they're a bartender. Because bartenders have nothing but time to badmouth people. So you want to control what's coming out of bartenders or people's mouths as well, because it's just the social environment. You could say that about a hairdresser as well. Find out if they're a hairdresser, man. Because if you're dealing with somebody that's got somebody's ear all day, you really need to treat them a little bit different.
yeah, that is interesting because we've had that conversation, the reverse conversation almost, about how to prepare for clients doing their due diligence on you, doing their due diligence online and doing their due diligence on purpose, in person. And this is the first time we've had a guest speak to us about the other way around. So, I mean, we have about 10 minutes left, but I do want to ask you a quick question on that. I mean, what steps are involved in doing your due diligence on a client?
First becomes the request or something that they say during your working processes. You're giving them the best service and the best of everything you could possibly do. There's always that trick, and I know every agent listening to this knows this. You know what? When somebody comes in and our price is a little bit more expensive than something they might have saw online or something an OTA had, the first thing out of most consumers these days is LaMacchia is trying to screw us. There's never, you go to Shopko and you compare it at Walmart. You know what? Walmart's not trying to screw anybody if they're, higher. It's kind of this mentality a little bit about travel. And it's one of those things, going back to when you hear these type of things, it's like, okay, time to start stalking. We're going to start looking them up, find out what they say. And the thing I will tell you about, and we've really done everything we can about not getting ripped on Facebook. Of course, people have said negative things. Part of the project when you're dealing with customers is make sure you've done all the right things at the end. They may not like what you say, but as long as you're telling them and being honest and forthright with them, if they publicly bash you or if they come out, you can stand up for yourself without using a phrase being bitchy. You can stand up for yourself in a very professional manner. And I think a lot of consumers that see comments like that about a company that's can stand up for themselves appreciate that. And there's going to be times where I've had an agent have a bad day and they did not handle a customer the way they should have. There's times where I've said, you know what, you're right. I'm sorry. You shouldn't have been subject to that. You got to be honest.
Yeah, just going off of that again, we have about 8 minutes left. So please, if you do have questions, get them in the chat. But you mentioned reviews online, and I've asked, I think, one other advisor this on these calls. I mean, what is your approach when you do get a negative review on Facebook or on Yelp or another social website? How do you respond to that? And how do you keep your reputation intact?
You mean after I start going, I just start yelling about it because I know we're right and they're just blowing smoke and just losing my mind? And, I think we talked the story about, my wife is my partner. So, they always say, leave work at home. That's bull. That doesn't stay at home. And I think, we've done very, very well protecting ourselves from being, socially bashed or whatever. But there was 3 Sundays, I think, in a row where we woke up on a Sunday morning and checked our text and somebody's like, hey, did you see what this person said about you? And we're like, that's how our morning starts. Like, what? And then you start looking at it and you're like, the nerve of them, or, we kill them with kindness. Two of those things, we called the client, and one of them had never used us before. So they didn't know what their expectation was, but they were traveling and they booked with one agent, and a friend of theirs booked with a different agent of ours. And their experiences with the agent were very different. So they took to the internet. Anybody know a good travel agent? LaMacchia Travel, blah, 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 blah. So we contact her and say, hey, what was we reach out to her directly. What was the problem? What can we help you with? And again, when you do that in a non-attacking way, that offline stuff, as you get that out, it works in your favor. Now, you'll know for a fact. I mean, I guarantee a couple that had, was not happy with us, they'll never come back to us. They won't, and and at a certain point, fine. I didn't tell them, I didn't fire them, which I could have and I should have, but I didn't. I let them. I'm like, okay, you know what? We stuck up for ourselves. We defended ourselves. Here's what we did. I get it. And we'll tell them, maybe in the future you don't want to work with us. We're sorry to hear that, but thank you for your past business.
Well, we have a question in the chat going off of that, Tom, and it's from Sandra again. And she wants to know, have you ever turned a client away that you thought you could not work with? And if so, how did you handle that?
Turn clients away when the product that they've asked for, we don't really offer. If you have a client come in and there's difficult clients, and we talked about that. It seems kind of a new wave of clients now, but we don't really say no to anybody. If they come in and they pre-COVID or anything, and they wanted to do a Grand Canyon tour, we'd say, we don't. That's not what we do for travel, or Zion. There's certain things we don't do. Back then the mobile homes, canyons. And we just politely tell them that. We give them a tourist board, or we give them a website that they can go check out. We always keep it very, professional.
Yeah.
We have people that try to make it as difficult to book with us as possible. And we really try to do everything we can to circumvent it. I had an agent today just tell me that a guy called and, he's been working on this Ireland trip for his family. And then we got it almost all the way to being booked. And his next comment is, well, I'm not getting vaccinated. I'm not wearing a mask, and I'm not going to get tested. And we're like, okay, we spent all this time laying everything out. Here's the deal. If any of those things happen, we're not responsible. You know what? You book, you buy the trip. We've got all our disclaimers in place. We've advised you, but that's on you. That's not on us. And there's many other things that like I said, we take responsibility or try to help them with. But something like that, we're just like, okay, why'd you call us? We might not be able to help you at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've had other advisors touch upon that on this series too. We had a couple of advisors talk about fees and have clients try to get that fee off their bottom line, and it always comes down to what the advisor's time is worth and what they want to put up with, I think. So the last one I want to ask you, and it's something that you mentioned just now in that answer, is that you said that you've had a whole new clientele since January 2021. And that is completely interesting to me because of how long your agency has been in business and the reputation you've built and the word of mouth referrals you've built as incoming clients. I mean, why do you think you've had this whole new clientele come in? Where do you think they came from? And what do you hope they turn into in the future?
It's interesting. When the world kind of opened up, basically it was just Sun and Fun opened up in, July, August last year, very slowly. And as it gained momentum, it was really the only destination. So we really started moving our social media messages were deals and discounts. And I got to give credit to Nolan, our marketing guy, who, knew the right offer to put at the right time. We weren't pounding offers out. We were putting images out like, Mexico's missing you, or Europe's missing you, or wouldn't you like to be standing at the Halakalani crater? And then like maybe every 10 days we'd put an offer out, and those offers caught on like wildfire. So we started bringing in, I would tell you right now, from that November to really the end of April, 65% of our business was all new clients that most of them probably had never used a travel agent before.
And were most of them local to you, even though they didn't necessarily come into your storefront?
Of that, I would tell you 70% were local. The other 30% were regional.
Okay.
Because I mean, the momentum and the message our Facebook page has is really fun, interactive, and then it's informative. So that's, and the expectation of the new clients is just really sometimes off the wall. I mean, it's just like their expectations, the way they treat you, the way they talk to you. What really blows my mind, though, is the number of transactions we actually did over Facebook. So people are giving us credit card numbers on Facebook Messenger. People are giving us credit card numbers by texting. And we have really changed the way we communicate. We've had to change the way we communicate with people these last 6 months. My veteran agents who are normally on the phone or on email, they're now working Facebook. They're now working the text. We've created this situation, and a lot of that business has been coming from that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, again, it's a testament to how long you've been in business, but it's the adapting seems to be key in your business and your relationships with your clients too. I don't think 10 years ago, I can't imagine agents who are on this call now thought they'd be getting credit card numbers over text or over Facebook Messenger.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Well, I want to, as we wrap up here, I want to thank you, Tom, for taking the time. You were very, very frank with us this whole time, and I really do appreciate that. But I want to give you a couple minutes to wrap up. If you have any other points you want to get to, or any message for the people on the call or the people watching this video in the future.
Sure. First and foremost, what I say appeals to me, it'll probably appeal to any other community-based brick and mortar agency. Doesn't mean aspects of it can't be introduced into your independent contractors, your at-home agencies. There's two words, and the longevity. There's two words I want to just really kind of point out. Number one, I mentioned it earlier, leverage. You got to get your agency to a position where you have leverage, not only with the vendors, but with your own finances and your money and your bank and your staff. Leverage is extremely important. It took me, like I said, somebody told me that years ago. It took me many years to really understand what that meant. The second thing I want to leave everybody with is relevance. I'm lucky, blessed, smart. I don't think I'm that smart, but we hire and we bring on people with a vision that are going to continue this 90-year cycle. I mean, we are just so excited. Every day we walk into LaMacchia Travel, LaMacchia Jetstream, Loving Away, whatever it may be, we look at the opportunities. We don't look like we're just coming in every day to sell travel. There's so many other things that you can do in the industry, but the key to it is you got to be relevant. So if you can get your leverage down, you get your relevance, you know what? You'll be hopefully like us celebrating your 90th year.
Yeah. And I very much, in 10 years, I'm going to make my way to Kenosha so we can celebrate 100 years.
Sounds good. So we look forward. You're absolutely invited, Dan.
All right. Sounds great. Well, thank you again, Tom. Thank you for everyone on the call. I hope to see everyone back here in 2 weeks. But until then, stay safe. Have a great rest of your day and great weekend. And yeah, hope to see you all back here soon.